Universe is singing on a day like this. Universe is singing a song. Universe is dancing alone. Universe is singing on a day like this.
So it's time to dance. So it's time to dance. So wake up and dance.
Aê, HcO, aterrissando nesta rede social, com pérolas e mais pérolas, histórias lindas, histórias de vida, histórias tocantes do mundo Osho. Gente de verdade, gente que se busca, gente que medita pra caramba, gente que dedica uma vida para se buscar, gente que celebra, gente que ama, gente que odeia, não brincando. Gente que vive. Fala, meu amor, Abi. É nós aqui, de novo, com mais uma pérola de Osho.
Vamos lá. Boa noite a todos, ou bom dia, ou boa tarde, quem sabe. Para quem assiste depois da HcO, são pedrinhas que a gente joga na água e elas vão
fazendo ondinhas,
criando ondinhas. Já é a nossa 70ª.
Yes!
Nosso 70º episódio de Histórias com Osho.
Vivo o número 7.
Isso. Com anúncios por fazer, nós renovamos já para a 4ª temporada. Muitas emoções por vir, né? Muitas histórias interessantes, engraçadas, emocionantes, ensinamentos, compartilhamentos. Essa semana, nesse fim de semana, eu estive com uma flor de Osho e, quem quiser saber mais, pergunta em mensagem privada que eu conto.
Não conta não, não pode contar.
E, bom, a gente vai passar o vídeo daqui a pouco, né? Então, os agradecimentos, os créditos da equipe da HcO estão lá. Então, ficam os registros ao final do vídeo. E nosso, enfim, especial agradecimento à Sanguinha, que está sempre com a gente aqui, a live, né? Nesta live, a live. E nossos apoiadores Pix. Dívia, deixa aqui a chave Pix do canal para a gente receber doações para poder ter combustível para a nave e ir mais longe. Já estamos gravando amanhã uma entrevista muito especial, muito aguardada, que virá na próxima temporada, aguardada às 7 chaves.
Ai, sim, gente. Queria tanto contar, mas não posso. Não vale, né? Tá bom. Não faço mais.
Recados importantes. Se houver travamento na reprodução, saiba que no dia seguinte estará a versão do YouTube já editada, bonitinho, se precisar, né? E se por acaso, como a conversa foi em inglês e há legendas em português, você cuida se tiver a legenda sobreposta, ou seja, nós colocamos no vídeo a legenda em português, se aparece outra língua em cima, ou mesmo português de robô, você tem que desativar as legendas automáticas da sua plataforma, da sua página do YouTube, do seu computador. Não somos nós que geramos essa legenda. Só para avisar, porque às vezes a gente ouve as pessoas dizerem a legenda não dá para ler, tem outra em cima, não sei o quê. Então, a pessoa tem que cuidar de suas próprias configurações. E o nosso recado de sempre, nosso bordão, não somos um canal oficial do Osho, somos apenas um grupo de amigos que gosta de contar histórias. Que histórias, Didi?
Histórias de Osho. Histórias com Osho, histórias com o mestre, histórias de amor, histórias de vida. E aí, gente, vocês estão preparados? Como é que tá o povo chegando aqui? Vem chegando, porque, olha, Satyarthi deu massagem no Osho, vocês sabem, né? Muita gente sabe. Mas ele relatando isso é a coisa mais linda. Então, né, assistam. A entrevista dele foi tocante, tocante, tocante. E, ao final, estaremos aqui para dar um beijo, só porque a gente gosta de aparecer mesmo. E adora estar aqui, adora estar perto de vocês. Viu, Sanguinha linda? Sanguinha está chegando, a gente vai começar.
Até já.
Great. So welcome.
Thank you.
Satyarthi, how did Osho get you from the beginning?
Okay. I was leading workshops. I was like 23 or something, and I was traveling California leading workshops in and doing sessions. I was just traveling around, and you know, I grew up in San Francisco, that area. So when I was 14, it was 1966, and it was hippie times. And there was at one point, like when I was around 17, 18, the gurus, the Indian gurus, started coming to where I lived. It's the Marin County over the Golden Gate Bridge, and I was going to see these gurus. You know, I had a spiritual longing. Coming from a place of feeling like something was really missing. I just had a longing to meet people who claimed to be awakened. And Indian spirituality was calling me somehow. But every time I met these gurus, it didn't last long. And then I met Maharishi, you know, and I became a transcendental meditation teacher. I went through like 9 months of what they called rounding, which was meditating all day long and doing yoga with 2,000 people in Spain and Italy. I saved up my money to do that with Maharishi and
the guru of the Beatles, yeah?
Yeah, the guru of the Beatles. And but by the time I got like 3/4 of the way through it, I thought, this is so full of shit. And I just didn't buy it. There was something about it. I just didn't buy into it. And also how we had to behave in order to become teachers. And I found it very affected, man. So then I left that. When I got out of that, I left it. I dropped that whole thing with him, with Maharishi. And I was in Marin, and there, you know, it was all these gurus. There was Muktananda, there was Satchidananda, there was Yogi Bhajan, and of course Ram Dass. And I was going to them, but I was not really impressed by anybody. Nothing pulled on me. So at one point I thought, well, maybe I made a mistake. It's not really Indian spirituality or gurus who I'm drawn to. I tried and it's not happening. And then suddenly I was doing workshops all around California leading, and people started coming to my workshops in San Diego. I decided to stay in San Diego because I just decided I liked it there. And they were coming to my workshops, and they were in orange and they had malas. This was 1975. And I was like a little intrigued. And then they were cool people, and they loved to dance and they loved to party. And, you know, I was 23, and it was sexy and it was juicy. And I started reading Osho, and I went, wow, this is a whole different level than I'd come across. I mean, by far, it was very impressive. And yeah, that was it, man. I got hooked, you know. So I was hooked on Osho. It was a big community. There was a community there and a center there. And and a lot of sannyasins were coming to me for sessions and some workshops. And I liked them very much. And I just thought, oh God, I got to meet this man. And then Krishna Prem was there, and he was trying to get this place, Gitam, happening, which was this big Osho center in the desert. And I was doing sessions on him. And so I gave him $500 at that time to make this center happen. So I went to his center, and I lived there for 3 or 4 months. And then I went to Pune, and that was it. I got hooked. I met Osho, I met the commune, and I was hooked. I got hepatitis, and I thought, I was on a super healthy health food, teaching health food, teaching shiatsu and acupuncture and anatomy and very healthy organic. And then I get hepatitis after I'm there a month in the monsoon. And I thought, whoa, but it didn't matter. On some level, I was just hooked, And then I was a disciple at that moment.
What year was it that you came to Pune?
That was 76.
76.
Yeah.
Wow.
And how was it? Did you take sannyas, and what's the meaning of your name?
I took sannyas. Yeah, of course I took sannyas. I was dying to take sannyas, And it was, and meaning of my name is divine seeker of truth. And, and I was very ambitious and very go for it and all of this. And then Osho told me that my name meant you seek truth, but you have to learn to be receptive. That's the only way you're going to find truth. So he kind of threw me in from my kind of assertive going for things to he totally turned it around and said, look, you have to be receptive. And at that point, I was seeing Osho like everybody else. I was going to darshan. I was in the lectures. I was in the commune, and the commune was wild, as you know and heard. And it was just a wild place, man. And the groups were really intense. And that's what shook me too. Osho gave me some groups, and I started doing the groups, and I worked with Tirtha, and I got my ass kicked, man. It was the first time in my life somebody really pointed out how arrogant and narcissistic and full of shit that I was, I never got that feedback before. In fact, I thought I'd meet Osho and he'd kind of recognize me, at that point in my life as somebody, and it was anything but that, it was like, but I was gone on the commune and I was gone on Osho. So I stayed there, and then Osho told me to do my work there. So I was doing sessions with the Rolfers and steady. And then I started teaching body work there, teaching dance workshops there. So I was doing my work there, and that was, and learning a lot, because there was so many good therapists, so many good body workers, and we were all sharing, because nobody was competing for money. And so we were just sharing. So we were sharing stuff together. And in that way, I learned much about the work and how to work with people. But at the same time, I was mesmerized by Osho, and first I wasn't afraid of him at all at first. In fact, in my arrogance, somehow I came to him and he gave me sannyas, and then he asked me what I did, and I told him, and I said something. It was also involved Reichian work. I asked him if he knew who Reich was. And of course, he's read everything on Reich, but what did I know? I didn't know that. And then he said, he just nodded very, very like this. He didn't say anything. He just went, very small little nod. And then I started telling him, and he was very patient with me, at that moment. And then I took sannyas, and then I lived there the whole time. From that point on, I lived in the commune. Whenever the commune was available, I was living in it and being with Osho. And I was doing work in what they called the group department in those days, and meditating with everyone, and the wild sexual scene that was there, just being part of that. And that was extremely exciting and heartbreaking and painful and everything all at once. And also with Osho, I had just a longing to try to find ways to get closer. And of course there was this kind of scramble amongst many sannyasins to get physically closer, to sit closer, to be closer. So I ended up getting a job as a guard, a kind of samurai-ish guard in lecture, where I was close, and then a darshan lifter, where when people had energy darshan, they had 6 lifters, and then you would stand behind them and hold them. So I got to go every night to darshan and do that job, and that was amazing. I was like really touched and moved and everything, it wasn't just I was touched and moved. I went through ranges of emotion because I had a longing to kind of melt into Osho, but of course, like everybody else, it really, in one level, it didn't really mean being physically close to him. And yet it seemed like when I was physically close to him, of course, I got more of a transmission from him, which was actually true, especially in the darshans. I would get these transmission because I was in this energy event that he was creating, where he did the strobe light and then the crazy music and he did all that stuff, and it was like a madhouse, but it was so beautiful. So Punawan, that was Punawan, and Punawan held a lot, it really woke me up to community also, what it meant to be in a sangam and to live with people and work with people and make lots of friendships and meditate with people and work on ourselves as a group and mirror each other, just mirror each other in so many ways, like many, many ways. And that I fell in love with too. I fell in love with living in that kind of intensity and yet softness. And it was so much fun, and yet it was also intense in terms, the intensity had to do with that it was very confronting, and at least for me, and I'm not speaking alone, it was very collectively very confronting. And there was India also. Suddenly I'm living in India, and that was real India too, because in the 76 to 81, that was really India, with lots of bullet carts and not many cars, and there was cars, but and the roads were really quiet, and lots of rickshaws, of course, and it just had with the whole thing with all the shacks on the river that sannyasins were living in, and that whole thing of India, it was also a big part of that experience of being with Osho is merging with India in some level and falling in love with India. I fell in love with India. It was like, wow, this is something that opens me up, that gives me so many possibilities, and it's so outrageous. It's still outrageous, that thing about India never changes. It never really changes. Many more cars, much more money, but it's still crazy and chaotic and heartful. That's the beginning of that story.
Then, did you go with Osho to the ranch straight, or you stayed somewhere before going?
Well, I went to the ranch when the ranch opened up for the group department to come. Just a part of the story I forgot to tell was right before he left, he got a bad back, Osho. So they called me in to do body work on him. And it was like, I must have done in that first time, I must have done 20, 25 sessions in a matter of 20, 25 days, because we did it every day. And, wow. And that also did something really strong to me, because he was a very simple, it felt very simple in one way. He would come in. I was very nervous the first times, here I am going to meet him in this way, very personally, but he just put me at ease, Vivek would walk in with him, and I was in his dining place. It was this balcony right in front of his room, which was his dining, and the table was there, and then he would come in and he would just put me at ease. He would be very sweet and call my name and say, do what you do, I'll be, And then he was very aware. I would work on him, I did deep body work and for his back, and he was like, pain point, this is a pain point. Should I tell you where all the pain points are? I said, yeah, that's great. And so pain point, why is there a pain point there? Is there a pain point there because of the left side of my brain? I'd be working on the right side of his body. He would be asking me questions like this, something with the left side of my brain. Or, he'd be asking me questions and not necessarily waiting for me to answer, I don't think, because I often didn't answer them, and sometimes I didn't know what to say. But the fact of the matter was, when I was doing the sessions, I wasn't nervous at all. I felt very, very relaxed. And I wasn't even high. I wasn't even getting a contact high. I was just doing the work. And then he would, at the end of the session, he would get up. I would ask him how his back felt. We'd look at it, evaluate it a little bit. And then he would just, Vivek, he'd put his shoes on. He had a lungi, and he would take with one hand this lungi. He was wearing shorts underneath. He'd take with one hand, just go right down to his waist, like really fast, while he was
one
talking.
hand.
Yeah, just go like this.
One hand.
And he would roll it under with one hand while he was talking to Vivek and me, and I think Amrito was there because the doctor always had to be there at that time, always actually. And when he had medical procedure. And then I'd walk out, and I was stoned, man. I was so high. But when I was in, I wasn't high. But when I walked out of Latsu house, I was high as a kite. But in a very different way, it changed me, because usually me being high, I was like gregarious and outward and extroverted. But I wanted to just kind of be in my room and meditative and just feel it. I didn't want to be amongst people and get asked a million questions about it. I just wanted to be with myself, and it was very unusual. And it was, I think, the first time in my life at that stage that I had that I had this real desire, longing to just be with myself and swim in my own. In that case, it was a kind of bliss, but a very soft, silent bliss. It wasn't like an ecstatic kind of bliss. It was a very soft, silent kind of bliss. And it happened every time. It was every time. There was no exception. And it also, what it did is and he talked to me about the work and what to do. And when I'm teaching people, he gave me suggestions of how to teach, what was this and what was that from receiving the sessions. And so he was also very aware to support me in that side of my life, which was such a big part of my life at that time. And I'm telling you all this, but at the same time, Sushila, I don't know if you remember her, but she was a big Jewish girl, like Diksha was a big Swiss-Italian girl who ran the kitchen. Sheila was that same type of real powerful, manipulative, vindictive, but he put those kind of women in charge. She was in charge of the group department. And I was lifting in darshan. I was doing sessions on Osho. I was sitting close because I was guarding and she said, you got to drop one of these things. It's too much. It's not okay. So she was fucking with me, man. She was like doing this whole thing just to fuck with me. I was so upset. And I went to Lakshmi and to Garima. I said, that's not okay. Is that okay? That is so not okay. And I said, I'm not giving up any of it. If he wants to tell me I have to give it up, that's that's the way it is. But you can't tell me. She can't tell me. And so they were on my side, luckily. But from that moment on, she worked me over whenever she could. She just worked me over. So there was lots of sides to it. It wasn't just bliss and, oh, I'm working on Osho, you know, and it's all sweet and harmony. It was, it had all the sides. It had jealousy, it had all this stuff, you know, and at the same time, you know, it just opened me up in a way that I had never felt before in my life. And it was all to do with Osho. Also opened my heart to him. So when I was in lecture, I felt so much more open to him. Or when I was in darshan, I would feel this heart opening to him that I hadn't felt before. And that was very special. Very, very special. And of course, the women were just trying to get my hand. They just wanted me, you know, because I touched Osho. Every day I came out of touching Osho. So it opened me up on that to the commune in many different ways, you know.
I guess the whole package comes all together, yeah?
All together, and it was very intense. You know, it happened in Pune too. In Pune too, I worked on them for 2 months or 2.5 months every day. But that's another story. I don't have to go there. But, you know, the same dramas and the same things. It was very similar, only it lasted a lot longer. And it was also one of the best times of my life. In fact, probably I would say the best times in my life in terms of my state of being and how I was in myself and fulfilling my needs also. There was something, it was amazing. Osho had power, man. Guy had power. He was just transmitted that spirit, and if you were that close in touching, if you were even a little bit open, you know, it penetrated your pores. It was just powerful. And the other side of it, it was addictive. It was like, you know, you needed the next fix and the next fix, man. And I was always scared it was going to end, you know. But, you know, of course it did end. And I went through my stuff with that too, but it was very, very addictive. I mean, I don't think I was, you know, I was not addicted to anything in my life like I was to that. You know, it was everything to me, and I had that opportunity, you know, to be with him in such a way. Yeah, so that was a powerful thing that happened to me just before we went to the ranch. And then I didn't go directly they went to New Jersey, right? They flew to New Jersey, and I went to Amsterdam and started doing my trainings in Amsterdam, which I was very happy. And I had a huge sannyas scene there. Like, they had the jail. I don't know if you guys knew about that, but they took over an old jail, and 500 people lived in it.
Was it called Mystery School?
I don't remember what it was called.
It was kind of 3 buildings.
Yeah, and it was huge, man. Yeah.
Yes, I've seen that place.
Okay. And there was like 400 or 500 people there, you know, and there was the Orange Full Moon Festival, so like thousands of sannyasins came. So I went there and I did my things, and I really had a good time there. Really good time. In fact, when they called me to go back to Gitam was the place where all the group department happened. Before we went to the ranch, we all went to this place in Southern California called Gitam, and that Krishna Press created, where I gave money at the beginning. Except for then the group department took it over, and we had our group department there, and we stayed there a year, and then we went to the ranch. After that first year, we went to the ranch and dropped that place, and there I was with everybody else.
And how was it in the ranch? The whole thing, with the
you know,
whole thing, the beauty.
I got to the ranch on the that first big festival they had, that's when the group department came up, man, and it was raining and it was muddy. It was sunny and raining and muddy, and everybody, like all these people that I used to know that were dressed in robes, were dressed like cowboys and and driving their big machines. These are the guys that actually started building everything before we got there. And I hated it. I hated it. When my first impression, I hate this. I didn't like the vibe. I didn't like the property. I was like, oh no. And but we were luckily going back. We just went for the festival. Then we went back, but we only lasted another 2 weeks or something in Gitam. Then we moved up to the ranch. And it took me a while, man. I remember Sheila coming to me, because Sheila had something with me. She really liked me for some, yeah, she did. She liked me. And she came to me and said, how do you like it here, you know? In front of lots of people, how she did in the eating area. And I said, to tell you the truth, I don't know yet, man. I'm not feeling it right this moment. She said, that's okay. I give you time. But then, you know, then we started, me and Anubuddha started working together, which we were doing already a little bit. We were doing it a lot in Gitam. We started doing trainings in what they called the multiversity then, and they still do. And that centered me there. Then I got very centered through the work, you know. And those trainings, those rebalancing trainings were like so popular. There was, you know, always 40 people for 4 months, 6 days a week. And that was like, that kept me centered in the work and that whole place. And I had like my place. And I was very lucky. And so I had my room to myself. I had my own room. And that was really a luxury on the ranch. And, you know, everybody shared a room. Not everybody, but almost. And so I had my own space there, and that was a luxury for me. And then I started enjoying the ranch. It had it's not something, I can never say I fell in love and felt totally at home in the ranch, like I did in Pune 1, or even Pune 2. But I learned to love it in my way. And, you know, Osho wasn't very available either for a long time. He'd go by in those drive-bys, you know, and do this out of his window. And if you were playing an instrument, sometimes he'd stop and do it with you, you know. But it was just it was like a flash. He wasn't really giving I mean, he did go through some lectures. He did do some personal kind of smaller lectures in his house. And so there was times when he was more available on the ranch. But you didn't get a lot of Osho for a long time in terms of him personally. And I think I missed that. I missed that kind of softness. It wasn't soft, it was intense. And the land was hard. The big muddy ranch, man, was like high desert. It was basically high desert, you know. And it was not a nice piece of property, but I mean, we made it nice. And then the politics started getting stronger and stronger, you know. Then Sheila started getting more authoritarian, more intense. It was always intense, though, around Osho, the mamas, you know. Who he put in charge, that was, I think, a device. And they were very functional. They could do things, you know. They were extremely functional, these girls. And it was also a device to just work us poor peasants over, you know. You know. But yeah, there was a lot I loved about the ranch also. You know, I loved my lifestyle there. I loved the commune again, and the beautiful people that were there, and working on ourselves together. You know, we weren't meditating so much on the ranch. There wasn't much meditation for the people working. It's like the work was the meditation. And I was just given an opportunity that was so beautiful to develop the trainings. And we had the choice of all the best therapists. So Osho told us, we should always bring in therapy once a week to these rebalancing trainings. So we could take Tirtha, we could take Amitabh, we could take Turiya or Vasumati, or we could take Rajen. And so we had this for free, they all came in and did great therapy on the people, but also on us, We weren't out of bounds. Sometimes we'd get in the thick of it also with them. Yeah, and that way it was so beautiful for me. And, and then so much happened, it was like, so much happened. Every day was so full. And I was young, and the amount we get up at 6, get on one of those school buses, and do gachamis. I would do one session before a training that lasted all day, and then I would do 2 sessions after the training, and then they would send me to the disco to work in the disco dealing blackjack at night, So you were working all the time. And the collective energy of a commune like that, of all those people doing that, just kept you going. It wasn't that I was tired. Then I'd go home with somebody, I'd go home with a woman at 11:30 at night and get up at 6 the next day, and it was like every day, there was no days off. So that energy was so full, and it was so big, the commune energy was so big. I don't know how many people were there. Osho always said 20,000. I doubt that was that many people there. I think at any given moment there was 5,000 or 6,000, and then the festivals there was 20. Maybe. And there we were, doing that. And when the ranch was over, I wasn't sad about the ranch being over. I was like, I was great to be there. But if it came to an end, I was just like, oh, hallelujah, man. Wild country. It had its wildness, but, it also was highly structured. And it lost the wildness of Pune 1. Let's say that. Pune 1 was really wild. Everything was crazy and wild. And this was different. It was very different. And it was a lot, even the communes were always authoritarian, it was big hierarchy, always women in charge, and tough women, He'd put tough women, if they weren't tough when they started, they became tough. And to break your balls, man. And they did. And that was part of his device, I think, that you had to deal with that. And how you dealt with that. And somehow I learned, like everybody else, I learned how to deal with it, how to, and how to be with these women. And I did my best to make friends with them the best that I could. And not to put them in a position where I felt like they were threatening, which they were in some way. It was still like relationships and sexuality and jealousy and competition over women, or women competing over men, and all that stuff that goes on. It was still very strong there. All that was going on at the same time, And I just stayed. And then when it was over, I was like, oh, yeah, I was relieved. And I went straight back to Amsterdam, just started my work again. And stayed in Europe, I'm American, but I was so far from America. This other thing, it was very unusual for me to watch. The Americans and the Europeans, and the difference when the ranch finished. Many people felt very betrayed, and then what happened with Sheila, and that happened all over the world. But the Americans, they were like I called them ranch casualties. They never recovered. I still meet these guys. I go to Marin County, where I grew up. There's a lot of old sannyasins there. I still meet these guys, and they never really recovered from a lot of them. I realized that culturally there was such a difference between Americans and Europeans, also South Americans, and But the Americans have a betrayal wound that is much stronger. And they reacted, they closed down much more. Not me though, I didn't. I went through my thing, you know, screaming and smashing walls when everything broke open and the whole thing happened with Sheila and it just freaked me out but I had a catharsis and that was it, man. And somehow I got over it.
So after Ranch comes the world tour, and you are in Holland, you said.
Yeah, the world tour was going on, and then, actually, no, that's not true. I went to Holland, yeah, right away, and then me and Anna Buddha, we started a commune for the rebalancing trainings in Tuscany, right underneath Miasto. There was this big hotel, and I mean, our trainings on the ranch were booking like 40 people, and as soon as we got out of the ranch, you know, we always dreamed, me and Anna Buddha would count the money on the ranch, you know, how much money they made, you know, 40 people paying $9,600, you know, it was a fortune for one training. We would just fantasize what we would do if it was our money, you know. And suddenly it was our money, man, and we had 40 people, and then we found this place in Tuscany, and it was connected to Miasto. Miasto actually owned the hotel, and there was this place, La Hacienda, and they just had renovated both places, and we could house about 100 people. Isn't that amazing? And so we had a staff of 26 people, and we could pick and choose whoever we wanted because all the communes were finished, and we paid everybody, and who didn't want to come to Tuscany and be in such a scene, you know? They only had to work 3 hours a day because 26 people supporting 40 people, there's not that much you can, you know, they didn't have, but we just wanted the people. We wanted to have all these people, and we did. You know, we lived, and we're Americans, me and Anna Buddha, we lived in these old, you know, buildings with these huge fireplaces, and, you know, Tuscany. If you're an American, you first see Tuscany, it's like a fantasy, you know. You can't believe it. Florence, Siena, the whole thing. And so we stayed there a year and did that. And we had really a cool commune. We had such a cool commune. And we had such a good time. And we did 4 trainings in a row with 40 people each for 2 months each.
And make money.
I bought a Porsche.
Cool.
And then did you bring your Porsche to Pune too?
No, then the whole thing, of course. Actually, we left. I left and went to a Byron Bay and did another training. Me and Anna Buddha started fighting after it finished, and so we went our separate ways. And I went to Byron and did another training and stayed there 4 months. And then Pune 2 started, and then I got called to come there, and went there. And that was an adventure in itself, and that was a beautiful adventure. You know, that was very different than either Pune 1 or the ranch. Even though it was in the commune, like you know, it was in Pune commune, and yet, you know, it was a very different time. So, and it was very exciting to be there for me again, to be amongst the Osho and to do our things there, you know, and just to be in the commune and to be able to be with Osho every day again. And that's where the second thing happened, you know, but there was a part of me, I remember being there, and then I had left Australia and I was in a training for voice dialogue when they called me. So I was in Pune, and then they gave me this beautiful room, and they put me in both lectures. There was 2 lectures, and not everybody, it was a very kind of, you know, lucky thing to be able to go to both the lectures. I got to go to both the lectures. So they were really giving me a lot. But at the same time, I had this thing that I I was going to stay in myself. I wasn't going to get, and I wanted to go back to Australia and study with Hal Stone and his wife to finish this voice dialogue training. I wanted to do that. And I told everybody, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it. I told the Multiversity, I'm going to go, I'll come back, but I'm going to do that. And the day, this is a true story, man. The day I was packed, waiting to go out of my apartment, just lying on my bed. I had like a half an hour before my taxi was going to meet me in front gate. And everybody's telling me I'm crazy. It's so stupid you go now. And I was determined to do it. And then suddenly, Paramartha and Swarup, the therapist, he came to my window and he said, be dressed and washed and to come into Lao Tzu in a half an hour or 40 minutes or something. And I thought they're playing a joke on me because they know I'm going now. And then he said, no, for real, be dressed. And so I did, and it all started again with Osho. He wanted sessions. He had a bad shoulder from doing this, I think, all the time in the lectures. He had a bad shoulder. And so they pulled me in to do sessions. And he said at the end of the first session, he said, well, I hear you're going to Australia. He said, I was thinking of calling you back for tomorrow, but I hear you're going to Australia. I said, no, I'm not going to Australia. That was obvious. He was playing with me, And then that went on for two months or 2.5 months or something. Those sessions, they went on for a really long time. And a lot of stuff came up then, It was beautiful like it was before, and it was very intimate in a way to be with Osho in that way. And he'd play tricks on me sometimes, Like I would look at, he'd be lying there, and I'd say, Osho, I wanted to work on his back, and he's lying on his back, and I'd say, turn over, and he would just look at me like I didn't say anything. And then I'd say, Osho, turn over. He would just look and not do anything. And then the doc, Amrito would get all concerned, and Vivek would come up, like maybe he's gone, or I don't know what they thought. And I was a little like, what, And then he was just playing tricks on me to see how I would be. And he had this way, of being a little bit of a prankster, like playing with. And I think it was a way of just seeing how deep you could stay and how much you could be there, or how distracted something would make you. I don't really know. It wasn't spoken about. It was also a very powerful time and a very emotional time in a way, and heartfully emotional. But also, again, the fear of losing the job. And then finally I did lose the job, and Anna Buddha got it. And the jealousy I went through, man, it was like being a jilted lover, man. And separate, you can't blame the woman, because the woman is Osho. And you can't, what can you say? You can't, it's not, he can do what he wants. And then he started doing sessions with Anna Buddha, and who I was working with. We were teaching together, and he was my best friend of the time. And that was like so painful. I went through so much jealousy and loss and grief. I wrote him many things, and he was very sweet, answered questions, and he was very sweet to me. He never hit me around that. One time I asked a question, and he didn't hit me, but he just made me see that I was comparing, and that comparison was not where it's at, basically. It was a real big teaching for me that whole time, huge teaching. How to come out of my personality to some degree and be more in my heart and innocence and being, and live that way more often. Because I had a strong personality that I developed and thought was cool in my own ignorance. And those times really with Osho really reflected that very strongly. And I would get messages through Neelam, who was his secretary of the time. He would send me a message, like Satyarthi is too in his personality. He needs to learn to meditate. but he will. And I thought, what have I been doing for the last 20 years? But at the same time, or for 30 years or whatever, at the same time, I knew what he meant. It wasn't offensive, because I knew exactly what he meant, and I didn't take it as a hit even. I took it as just a direction that he was giving me, and a support, actually. Wow. Yeah, so Pune too was beautiful also. It had a whole different vibe than all the other communes, like everyone did. And Osho was very available in terms of lectures. And the lectures, as all lectures, you know, with the commune, to be in that. We're everything, to be honest. We're beautiful, we're tedious, sometimes too long. You sit there too long, and sometimes so inspiring, and sometimes I would click into spaces, and other times not. And it was like life, you know, learning how to meditate, learning how to receive, as he would told me at the beginning, that I needed to learn to receive in order to find truth. So he was teaching us and teaching me how to receive and how to be porous and allow a transmission that he was giving to come in beyond the words, you know. Of course, the words were like, you just were awestruck by his abilities, like we all are, to speak, and his understanding and his brilliance. It was the energetic transmission that he was putting out that I had to learn to receive, and that was always my thing, and still is my thing. I have to learn to receive, you know, it's a life work for me.
Wow, we are very touched for your testimony. I would just like to talk to us about Osho leaving his body. How was it for you? And how did you integrate it in your being up to now?
I'm going to be like 100% honest about how it was when it first happened. When Amrito came out and said that he left the body, it was a shock. It was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Even though all the signs were there, he was barely hanging on, and you could see it, you know. He'd come out for 5 minutes and do a few namastes and go back. And it was, then he wasn't coming out for a long time. And then we changed his name from Osho to No-Show, you know. You don't get it, because he wasn't out, you know. And then when he did that, when Amrita told us that he left the body, I was like, first I was really hit. It was really strong grief that hit me. And I immediately went to my friends afterwards, and we just were like in disbelief in a way. And then it turned into like this, me and Anabuddha, you know. Anabuddha, I remember saying to me, we'll be millionaires before we're 30. Because we were set free to go make money, right?
And
I remember that line of Anabuddha, we'll be millionaires before. And there was this sense, one part, there was a sense of kind of relief because of the pressure, the intense pressure that you, in some way you don't even know you're under. Mm-hmm. It's like a fish in the ocean. You don't know you're really in that level of pressure until the pressure cooker starts to, and so he left the body, and I felt like, and then what happened is it became, and this was a collective experience, it was my experience, it became one of the most beautiful months I'd ever lived also. People came from all over the world to Pune, and the structure fell apart, and the hierarchy fell apart, and everybody was in their heart, because everybody loved Osho so much, you know. And I went through a period before that happened of grief, where I cried quite a bit. Because I'm a crier, I'm very emotional. And so you too, I cried quite a bit for a period. I felt the loss of him, and I missed him. And I knew and and I was listening, and it's not about his body, he's there for all of us without the body, and I understand that, but the physicality was also something for me that we all were very deeply impacted. But people came, thousands of people came from everywhere, and everybody was in their heart. I never experienced that large group of people so deeply in their heart, never in the commune before, all at once. And it was really full of love, the atmosphere. And it lasted for and people were vulnerable, and in that vulnerability, their heart was open. And it lasted for, I forget exactly, I would say about a month. And, we still didn't really know what to do. And then, of course, I did my thing with my work, and I don't even remember where I went. That was after Pune too. Where did I go? I forgot. But how I've integrated it. We listen to Osho every day. I listen to Osho every day. I do a meditation with my wife, Subi, and I listen to Osho every day. And it keeps me connected to him, just to hear his voice and to listen to his wisdom and to go into a silent state. Like I'm singing to the choir now, but I needed something. So I went to the Miracle of Love, where there was this Kalindi and Gorasana and the lady, and I actually joined that community for 6.5 years. Dropped my name, they made me drop my name, became Dylan, and kind of surrendered to that for 6.5 years. The woman I went there with was a sannyasin, Spanish. She's still there, and I see her occasionally because I go to Denver. They're in Denver. I go there to lead the Path of Love, and I see her every year actually. I'm doing my best. I dropped out of that. I learned a lot from that, but it was no Osho. It was powerful for me, but no Osho, these women. I'm not looking for a master now. I'm not looking for a Muji or somebody else right now. And part of me longs for that, and I'm 70, I just turned 70. So there's like what comes, and this could be maybe the end of this whole interview, but what comes up the strongest for me is, I put so much work and so much energy into my work, so much around marketing it, and I love it. I love my work, and it's a contribution, yeah. And I love the lifestyle that it gives for me. And I teach a lot of people and blah, blah, blah. It supports people, and it's a contribution, and it's a need I have to contribute. And it gives me a great lifestyle, and I really love it. But there's another side of me that says, man, I'm 70 years old. And hey, I'm listening to him this morning, and he's saying, you got to put all your energy into becoming awakened if you want to become awakened. And I'm realizing, hey, maybe I should drop this work. And I don't know, I'm not looking for a master, but just go for my transformation. And the last years of my life, however many years that may be, just put it all into my transformation. And however I find my way to do that, through meditation, through therapy, being Jewish, I like therapy, through whatever comes to me, whatever I discover. So that's how I'm living it right now. But that's a split in me. That's a split. The seeker is calling on me. Osho's calling on me when I listen to him, and he's saying, put all your energy into this. And it was one time, I'll finish with this, one time, man, I wrote a book with Rakesh called Living in Balance. And somehow the publisher, which of the book, we had a dedication to Osho, but the publisher, before he published it and printed it, took the dedication to Osho out.
Wow.
So then we were in Pune too, and we sent it to Osho. And Osho, he didn't give a shit about the book. He just wanted to see the dedication. It was dedicated, and it wasn't. And then he smashed me. He said, what do you want to get successful and famous? Is that what you want? And make lots of money and become well known and become, or do you want to, become awakened? And that was what the question he put at me. And I have to say, when I'm speaking to you right now, in the last while, that's exactly the question I'm asking myself. And yet I am doing what I'm doing. But I wonder myself, man, am I courageous enough in myself to drop a lot of this works, which gives me a lot, and just find ways to just work and work and work on myself and live the last 15, 10, 5, whatever amount of years I have, just working on myself. And that's somehow Osho calling me, I feel, calling on my spirit, you know, and not letting me just cruise.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for your loving sharing and your sincerity also. You opened up and you're really true with us. We thank you so much.
Thank you guys, really, for inviting me to this. Yeah, really, I was very excited about it happening. And,
Wow.
Yeah, I was very excited to be able to share, you know. And
me too.
So thank you guys. Thank you
Me
guys.
too. We were very nervous just before.
Yes, a little bit.
Oh, really? Huh? How did you
Not
get
now.
my? How did you get my? How did you think of doing it with me? How did that come?
Well, we just go around and see people who were meaningful to us, you know. We had interviews already with Vasant Swaha. I don't know, he was a
Yes,
bodyguard there.
Yeah, I know.
He has his own people now.
Yeah.
And also Prashantam, Chandrika from the Human University, Maniko, the singer, and so many beautiful people. So you also part of it. Part
I
of
work
it.
with massage too.
She's a body worker.
Oh, good, man.
And I heard about you since long time ago.
Oh, good. And where you guys live in Brazil?
I'm in São Paulo.
You're in São Paulo? You too, Bill?
No. I live in Porto Alegre. That's the very south. Okay. So, Satyarthi. She wants to ask you.
Only a question about your work, Fluid Body. It seems to me so different to rebalancing in Fluid Body. It's like an evolution. And how can you explain the deepest touch and the fluid touch in the body?
God. My work is not called Fluid Body. It's just a module of my work. It's called Fluid Body, a 6-day module. My work I call myofascial energetic release.
Okay.
And the fluid part is I work a lot softer. I go deep. It's deep body work. Fluid body is a lot of joint movement and bringing fluidity throughout the whole body through the joint movement, and moving joints throughout the body, and integrating that with the deeper touch. But now I work with deep touch, connected deep breathing, and myofascial unwinding. So it becomes very energetic, actually. There's the energetic part. Okay. But anyway, thank you for asking that. Okay. Are you guys friends?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
You're friends for a long time?
For a long time.
For a long time.
Long time.
And what gave you the thought to start doing these interviews?
Well, first I felt the need to share, you know, because Osho gave us so much. And then I called Divya because she came after, she came after Osho left his body. And she has the same passion I have for Osho, the same feeling. So I called her straight away and said, let's do something. And then it all started by itself. We always feel that we are not doing it. We are just carried. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know how long we're going to do. We had already 57. 57.
And they go out on Facebook and YouTube, huh?
Yes, Facebook, mainly in Brazil. There are 2 Facebook groups, more than 100,000 people in Brazil. So we do it live. We record interviews. Either we do it live with Portuguese-speaking people, or if it's English speaking, then we record
and put subtitles.
Yes, and then
That's
we open it live, and then show the interview. Yeah, that's how we're doing. We are getting very much openness from people usually.
100,000. That's huge.
Yeah, that's the group where we share it. Yeah, there are two groups of 100,000.
That's a lot.
But usually it goes around, alive, it goes from 20 to 150 people live. Then afterwards go like ripples, you know?
Yeah, right. More and more views.
I count these views. We reached 73,000 people, or views, not people, up to now.
Oh, cool.
So we keep going.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool. Okay.
Whenever you come to Brazil, let us know that.
Okay, I will.
Come to hug you at least and have a cup of tea. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ai, gente, o que é isso? Que entrevista é essa? Bi, não é muito lindo? Cara, olha o que a gente está fazendo, né? Olha o que a gente está fazendo, trazendo essa riqueza, né? Guardada.
Eu sempre penso, quando a gente fez ali, já tinha feito 73, a gente...
57.
Não, 57, agora a gente, hoje foi 70, né, do número 70. Falou ali 73 mil views, a gente já passou de 85. Então, vai indo, esse trem, essa nave louca.
Essa nave louca não para mais, não para mais.
Este mestre
Cara,
que nos
live,
inspira,
né?
que nos inspira, com este mestre que nos inspira. Aliás, hoje eu vim de ultraje a rigor. Não a banda, porque eu não gosto do cantor, principalmente das opções políticas dele. Mas...
bom, também, não vê o caso. Só piadinha basta. Ó, esse aqui é especial demais. Né, meu amor? Então, vamos embora, né?
Semana que vem tem mais.
Ai, cara, semana que vem tem mais. Só fica mais lindo, tá? Só isso que eu tenho para dizer. Tchau, gente. Beijos, beijos. Muito obrigada pela permanência aqui conosco.